Hi, welcome to another Stevecast. And this time round, I'm going to tell you the story of the making of Steeltown, a musical. And roughly 1997-8, I was a lecturer in composition at South Tyneside College Performing Arts. And there I met a chap called Tom Kelly. Tom is a playwright, poet, and a songwriter. And we kind of knew each other by reputation, but in the staff room between sessions, we talked about songs, music, about life, about all sorts really. And I must have told him about my early days in the music with Bullfrog and Consett and all of that stuff. And one day Tom handed me a slip of paper, and it read, "Steeltown, a new musical. A young man dreams of escaping from his steelworks to a life in the music industry." And he said, "Do you want to work on that?" I said, "You betcha." It sounded really interesting and exciting and mirrored my early days of starting out in the steelworks and then getting out of there and becoming a songwriter. So Tom worked on the script and he handed me a first draft, and I was astonished. The first lines were, "I stood at the place where the ore trains came in. The spanner was frozen to my hand. I swear it was the coldest place on earth." That wasn't made up. That wasn't a script. That was a story I had actually told Tom earlier one day about how cold it was where the ore trains came in to Consett. And this went all the way through the script. It was just full of stories I told him, interwoven with the time when the people in Consett were fighting for survival of their steelworks. It was going to close, and they fought tooth and nail. In the end, they lost. When they tear down this town. This is the script, and you can see there I am serving two apprenticeships, one in the steelworks by the blast furnace. I drew the short straw. I was destined to become a blast furnace mechanic. But the other image is a second apprenticeship I was serving in the pubs and clubs around the northeast of England as a musician. And I think you know which career won out in the end. So we worked on this, and I started to pull some songs together. And one day Tom gave me a lyric, and it was called "He's Got a Dream." And it tells of how this character, David Henderson, was the young man trying to escape the steelworks as it was closing. But it was really me. It was my story. He's got a dream, stardust in his eyes, our precious dream, and now we realize that it means more. So this lyric told of how David's parents, my parents, felt about my dream. He's got a dream. And I said to Tom, how did you know about that? He said, "That's how all parents feel." I'll post a link in the description below where you can hear any of the songs I'm referring to, and where you'll find "He's Got a Dream" sang by the member of the original cast, Tracy, I think it was Tracy Hartley. Apologies if I've misremembered that. By the time I put that video together, I'd moved to Teesside. So that's why you see people of Teesside who had a dream also in that clip. But check out the link and you'll hear various songs from the musical. Over the years, I've used those songs on albums and live gigs, so I'll collect them all together and put them in a playlist that you'll find at the end of the video and in the description down below. One of the songs in the musical is Hurry Home, and David, my alter ego, declares he's written this great song and the band don't like it because it's too schmaltzy, but he thinks it'll be a hit, and he declares it'll be on top of the pops. I'll buy a house in Whitley Bay. And of course the audience laughed, because most of them knew that story emulated exactly what happened to me. Now, the director of Steeltown was a lady called Jackie Fielding, and she taught me something I've never forgotten, and I've used it many times since. And so she said, you know, when you get to the last song and it ends, you're going into the reprise of the first song too quickly. The song was "It'll All End in Tears," and the last line is "It'll all end in tears when they tear down this town." Now, it's a bit of a downer to end the show on, so we then went into "Your Finest Hour," which is a much more uplifting song. But Jackie said you should wait when the final strains of "It'll End in Tears" finishes. Wait. It's almost a game of chicken. If you leave enough pause, the audience will applaud. You wait until the first person claps, and then of course they all clap, because you force them to understand that the show is over and it's time for applause. And only then, when you hear that applause, you go into the final number. It's a lesson in timing, which I learned and used it to great effect loads of times. So the first show. Now, when we finished writing the piece, it was always the case that the second year students in the Performing Arts College would mount a major theatre show, and this was to be their show, Steeltown. And they were all excited about it because they knew the story. So all the characters were cast, and the show was to be at the Custom House, a smashing theatre in South Shields, and that was the plan. We worked on that for quite a long time, and finally went to the Custom House and ran a series of 3 shows in the evening and 2 matinees, and the show was received tremendously. But my heart was set on something else. I wanted to take the show home to Consett. So we looked for a venue in Consett where we could take the show, and the Empire Theatre, a fabulous venue, agreed that they would like to see the show in Consett. So that was on the cards. Now, prior to mounting the show, I visited Consett a few times, and I went up there to Consett Men's Forum, where my father had arranged for a group of men who had worked in the steelworks to come and tell me some stories. A couple of those guys were uncles of mine, and one was my Uncle Gilbert, who told the story of how he had slept on night shift at the steelworks and dreamed that there was an emergency. So when he woke up, he dashed off to where the dreamed emergency was taking place for his repair, and it was just a dream.
So we used to work a rota round the plant on call-out night shift, and we had a nice coke fire down the boiler shop, and we used to sleep in the barrows, and it was just an ordinary wheelbarrow, you know.
So it became the time to start the show at the Empire in Consett. We went up there, set the whole setup, and have a stage rehearsal. By now I was living in Teesside, so I set off to go home. And there was some sort of emergency on, a a petrol shortage. I can't quite remember what it was all about, but the queues were a mile long to get petrol. I wouldn't have been able to get home. So the next day I travelled back to Consett, and I decided to stay in Consett for the duration of the show, because I probably couldn't get petrol to travel to and from Teesside. So I stayed with my parents, who lived in Dipton, and it was amazing. Every morning I would leave my parents' home to travel to Consett for the show, just as I used to do to travel to Consett to go to the Steelworks. So because I was staying in Consett, I remained in the theatre between the matinees and the evening shows. And I went out one day into the streets, and I bought the requisite toothpaste, toothbrush, a flannel for my face. You know the song I'm talking about. And I felt like a real touring thespian. It was a fabulous time. And one day, in the time between the matinee and the evening show, I took the entire cast over to the Freemasons Ballroom, which is directly opposite the Empire Theatre. And of course, the guys knew all about the Freemasons Ballroom because it was in the script. It was part of the story. And that's where I played my very first gig with Bullfrog. So I took the guys over there, almost like it was a shrine. And when we got back into the theatre, I had the band go through one of the songs we played at that very first gig in 1969, Sunshine of Your Love by Cream. Talk about worlds colliding. After the last show, I went back to my parents' home and left all my equipment in the theatre to make an early getaway the next morning. The next day, I went back to the theatre, and my father came with me, helped me get my amplifiers out and all that stuff. Now, before I tell you the last piece of this story, I'm just turning to the script. And in the final scene of Steeltown, David Henderson, who is really Steve Thompson, is about to leave for London to seek fame and fortune in the music business. So John Henderson, who's never really believed in David's dreams, has come round, and he turns up at the railway station and he hands him an envelope of money. I've been putting this to one side for a rainy day, and this is about as rainy as it gets. David: no, Dad, you're going to need it. John Henderson: you'll need all the help you can get to hold on to that dream of yours. Excuse me. So my father's helping me with my equipment into the car, and as we're just about done, he passes me my acoustic guitar in his guitar case, and I load it into the car. Now, my father has been to every show, including the matinees, so he knows the script back to front. And I said to him, where's the envelope of money?